What the hell is that child doing in my house?
What the hell is that child doing in my house?
I wasn't informed
Sir,
anyone
I
had
wasn't
entered,
informed
he
anyone
said
had
carefully.
entered. Security should have.
Should have? Daniel snapped, his patience already thinning. Then explained to me how a child walks through my gate, past my staff, and into my home, unnoticed. Calloway had no answer. Daniel's attention had already shifted. The girl stood in the center of the room with her back turned, small against the towering ceilings and polished marble floors. She moved slowly, scanning the space, bending slightly to look under a chair. "Go ask her," Daniel ordered. Calloway nodded and approached. "Miss?" he said gently. "Can you tell me how you got in here?" "I was looking for my cat," the girl replied without turning. He ran inside. Calloway hesitated. "Your cat?" "Yeah, I think he's hiding." Calloway lingered too long. Behind him, Calloway. The warning was enough. Daniel was already moving forward, footsteps sharper now. "This is not a conversation," he said coldly. "Step aside." Daniel stopped just behind the girl. "How did you get into this house?" he demanded. She turned, and everything inside him broke. "No," Daniel whispered, stepping forward, eyes wide, searching. "No, that's not possible." His voice trembled raw, unguarded. "Lily?" The name slipped out like something sacred. "You," he shook his head, disbelief flooding his face. "You're here? How are you here?" The girl blinked, confused. "I think you made a mistake," she said softly. But Daniel didn't hear her. He stepped closer, urgency rising. "Don't you recognize me?" he asked, almost pleading now. "It's me. It's your father. I'm your dad, Lily." Calloway froze behind them. "I've been looking for you," Daniel continued, voice breaking through years of silence. "For both of you, you and your mother. I thought you were gone." His eyes softened, something fragile surfacing. "I missed you," he said quietly. "God, I missed you both so much." The girl shook her head slowly. "I'm not Lily," she said gently. "My name is Annie." Daniel stared at her as if the words didn't exist. "That's not possible," he murmured. "You look exactly like her." "I was just looking for my cat," Annie said again, glancing around. "He ran in here and I followed him. And then I couldn't find the way back." She hesitated, then slowly reached into the small pocket of her hoodie. "I have a picture," she said. Annie pulled out a slightly worn photo, edges soft, like it had been handled many times, and held it up. "This is my mom," she said. Daniel took it. His fingers, so steady in every other part of his life, shook as he looked down. Two women stood side by side in the photo. Identical. Same face. Annie pointed at one of them. "That's my mom," she said. Then she pointed at the other. "And that's her sister, my aunt." Daniel's heart began to pound. He swallowed hard, voice barely holding together. "Your aunt?" Annie nodded. "She used to live with us a long time ago," she said quietly. "But then she moved away." Daniel's hand tightened around the photo. He slowly reached into his jacket again and pulled out his own picture, the one he had carried for years. He held it next to Annie's. The woman in both photos was the same person, or two versions of her. Daniel looked at Annie, his voice unsteady. "This girl," he said, pointing at the child in his photo. "That's Lily." Annie leaned closer. Her expression changed. "That's my aunt's daughter," she said softly. The words landed, but Daniel didn't understand them. "What?" he asked. "My aunt had a little girl," Annie continued. "She looked just like me." A small pause. Then, gently, "She got really sick." Daniel's world tilted. "And she died." Annie finished quietly. "A little over a year ago." Daniel didn't move. The photograph slipped slightly in his hand. "No," he whispered. "No. That's not. No." His knees weakened just enough that he had to steady himself against the edge of the table. Calloway stepped forward instinctively. "Sir," But Daniel lifted a hand, stopping him. His eyes never left Annie. She didn't. He tried again, but the words wouldn't form. They told me. He stopped. He had walked away before there was anything to hear. His gaze returned to the photo. The child. His child. Gone. Daniel didn't remember sitting down. One moment he was standing holding the photograph like it might still change if he looked at it long enough, and the next, he was in the leather chair beside the window. His body lowered without permission, as if something inside him had simply given out. Annie was still there, standing a few feet away, watching him not with fear, but with something quieter, something closer to concern. Daniel exhaled, but it wasn't steady. "Say that again," he said, his voice rough now. "What you said about her." Annie shifted slightly, unsure if she had done something wrong. "My aunt?" she asked. Daniel nodded once. "Barely. She got sick," Annie said softly. "My mom said it happened fast. They didn't have enough money for all the treatments." Each word landed heavier than the last. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Not long, just enough for the truth to settle where denial had been. When he opened them again, something had changed. "And her daughter?" he asked quietly. "Lily?" Annie nodded. "She was sick too," she said. "They tried to take care of her at home." A pause. "She used to draw a lot. My mom said she liked drawing cars and houses." Daniel's grip tightened slightly. Cars and houses. He almost laughed. Of course she did. He had built a world out of steel and glass, and his daughter had drawn it in crayons, somewhere he never went back to. "Did she?" Daniel's voice faltered. He cleared it, trying again. "Did she ever ask about me?" The question came out softer than he intended. Annie looked at him. Really looked this time. "I don't know," she said honestly. "My mom didn't talk about you." Daniel leaned back slightly, his eyes drifting toward the tall windows. Outside, the city moved like it always did, cars passing, people walking, life continuing without pause. None of it had been enough to save a child he didn't even know he was losing. Or worse, a child he had chosen to leave. If this moment touched something inside you, take a second to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from and what you felt in this scene. And if stories like this matter to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Stories that stay with you long after they end. "Sir," Calloway said carefully, stepping closer. "Perhaps we should contact the authorities. The girl's mother must be—" "No." Calloway paused. Daniel didn't look at him. "She's not a trespasser," he said quietly. "She's a child who got lost. A beat. She stays until we find her mother." Calloway inclined his head. "Of course, sir." Daniel finally looked back at Annie. She hadn't moved much. Still standing there, small and steady, holding on to the edge of her sleeve with one hand. "Are you hungry?" he asked. The question surprised even him. Annie blinked. "A little," she admitted. Daniel nodded once. "Calloway, have something prepared." "Yes, sir." Calloway moved quickly, grateful for something practical to do. Daniel stood slowly. For a moment, he hesitated like he wasn't entirely sure what to do with himself. Then he gestured lightly. "You can sit," he said to Annie, motioning toward the dining area. She walked over without hesitation and climbed into one of the chairs, her feet not quite reaching the floor. She looked around again. "Your house is really big," she said. Daniel gave a faint nod. "It is." There was no pride in it. Annie rested her elbows on the table, then caught herself and pulled them back slightly, as if remembering something her mother had told her. "Sorry," she said. "It's fine," Daniel replied. A small silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. "Do you always live here alone?" Annie asked. Daniel paused. "Yes. Don't you get bored?" Instead, he said nothing. Annie swung her feet slightly, then looked at him again. "You looked really sad before," she said. "I was," he admitted. Annie nodded, as if that made sense. "My mom gets that face sometimes." she said. When she thinks I'm not looking, Daniel's chest tightened slightly. He looked away for a moment, then back. And what do you do when she looks like that? He asked. Annie shrugged a little. I sit next to her, she said, so she's not sad by herself. Calloway returned then, setting a plate down in front of Annie. Warm food. Thank you, Annie said politely. You're welcome, miss. Daniel watched her. Sat a child who did not belong to him, and yet had just changed everything. The first call came 10 minutes after Annie finished eating. Calloway stepped quietly toward Daniel, holding out a phone. We've located a possible match, sir, he said. A nurse, Lisa Carter, reported a missing child 20 minutes ago. Daniel didn't take the phone immediately. He was watching Annie. She had slowed down, her plate nearly empty now, her small hands resting on the table. The urgency she carried earlier had softened, replaced by something calmer, like she had found a temporary place to stop running. She's looking for her, Calloway added. Daniel nodded once. Put her through. Calloway handed him the phone. Daniel stood and walked a few steps away, his voice lower now. Lisa Carter? A pause. Then a voice tight, breathless, already breaking. Who is this? Where is my daughter? Is she with you? I swear to God if... She's safe, Daniel said firmly. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. Safe? The woman repeated, her voice trembling. Where? With me. Another pause. Who are you? Daniel hesitated for half a second. Then, Daniel Whitmore. The silence on the other end changed. It wasn't relief. It wasn't trust. It was something else. Recognition. I'm coming, she said immediately. The line went dead. Daniel lowered the phone slowly. Behind him, Annie looked up. Was that my mom? She asked. Yes. Is she mad? Daniel considered the question. Yes, he said honestly. Annie nodded, as if that made sense. She gets mad when she's scared. Daniel didn't respond, because that sentence stayed with him longer than it should have. He set the phone down and turned back toward her. She's on her way. Annie relaxed slightly in her chair, but didn't move. You're not going to send me away before she gets here, right? She asked. Daniel paused. No, he said. I'll wait with you. That seemed to be enough. Annie nodded and slid off the chair, walking slowly toward the large window. She pressed her hand lightly against the glass, looking out. The city stretched beyond the gates, far away, like another world. Daniel watched her from a distance. He didn't move, didn't interrupt, because something about the moment felt fragile. Like if he said the wrong thing, it would break. Do you live far from here? Annie asked without turning. Yes. Is it like this? No. She glanced back at him briefly. Good, she said. Daniel frowned slightly. Why? Annie shrugged. It's too quiet here. The answer caught him off guard. Too quiet. He had spent years making sure it stayed that way. No noise. No chaos. No reminders. And yet, standing here now, it didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. A car pulled up outside. The sound was distant, but Annie heard it immediately. She turned. That's her, she said. Daniel didn't ask how she knew, because she was right. Minutes later, the front doors opened. Footsteps quick, uneven, echoed through the hall. Annie, the voice broke before the name finished. Annie ran. Fast. No hesitation. She crossed the room in seconds and threw herself into her mother's arms. Lisa Carter dropped to her knees, holding her tight, almost too tight. I told you not to wander, she said, her voice shaking. Do you have any idea? I was looking for smoke, Annie said softly. Lisa pulled back just enough to look at her. You don't leave the block, she said, trying to stay firm, but her hands trembled as she checked Annie's face, her arms, her shoulders. I know, Annie whispered. Lisa closed her eyes for a second, then she held her again, longer this time, slower. When she finally looked up, Her eyes met Daniel's. Everything changed. The warmth disappeared, replaced by something guarded, sharp, protective. "You," she said. Daniel didn't move. "She's safe," he repeated. Lisa stood slowly, keeping one hand on Annie's shoulder. "I can see that," she said, but her tone said something else. She stepped forward slightly. "What I don't understand," she continued, "is how my daughter ends up inside your house." Daniel held her gaze. "She followed a cat through an open gate." Lisa let out a short breath. "Your gate shouldn't be open." "It usually isn't." A beat. Lisa looked around the room, then back at him. "You could have called the police." "I called you." That stopped her for a second. Just a second. Then she nodded once. "Thank you," she said. The words were polite. Nothing more. She turned to Annie. "Let's go." Annie hesitated. She looked at Daniel, then back at her mother. "He helped me," she said quietly. Lisa softened just slightly. "I know," she said. Then, after a pause, she looked at Daniel again. "Still doesn't mean I understand it." Daniel accepted that. Because she was right. There was nothing simple about any of this. Lisa reached for Annie's hand, but Annie didn't move right away. Instead, she looked back at Daniel one more time. "You don't look as sad anymore," she said. The words were simple, but they landed. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because he wasn't sure if it was true or if it was just different. Finally, he said, "Not the same." Annie nodded, satisfied with that. Then she took her mother's hand. Lisa turned to leave. But just before she did, she stopped, looked back at him. "Stay away from us," she said quietly. Not angry, not loud, just firm, protective. Daniel didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't defend himself. He just nodded once. "I understand." Lisa held his gaze for a moment longer. Then she left. The door closed behind them, and the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. Daniel stood there, unmoving. The room was exactly as it had been. The same walls, the same light, the same stillness. And yet, something had shifted. Something that's transversable. Daniel didn't look at him. "Find out everything about them," he said quietly. Calloway paused. "Everything?" Daniel nodded. "Where they live, what they need, who's around them, a beat, and why that child walked into my house, looking like my past came back to life." Calloway inclined his head. "Yes, sir." Daniel remained where he was, alone again, but not untouched, because for the first time in years, the life he had built no longer felt complete, and somewhere out there was a child who wasn't his, but had just made him question everything he had become. Daniel did not sleep that night. The mansion remained silent, as it always was, but the silence no longer obeyed him. It pressed in, heavier than before, filled with something unfamiliar, unfinished thoughts, unanswered questions, and a memory that refused to stay buried. He stood by the window long after the city lights dimmed into a scattered glow, his reflection faint against the glass. For years, this view had meant control, distance, power. Now it felt like separation from something he should have never left behind. "Sir," Calloway's voice came from behind him, quiet but deliberate. Daniel didn't turn. "Well?" he asked. "I have the initial report," Calloway said, stepping closer, holding a thin folder. "Lisa Carter, registered nurse. Works double shifts at St. Mary's Hospital." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Double shifts. Of course. Address? Queens. Older residential block. Rent-controlled unit. Daniel nodded slightly. "What about the sister?" Calloway hesitated just enough to be noticed. "There are records," he said carefully, limited but consistent. "The sister Marianne Carter moved out several years ago. No stable address after that." Daniel turned now. "And the child?" Calloway's voice lowered. "Deceased, approximately 14 months ago." The number landed clean. Too clean. Daniel looked away again. 14 months. Not long enough to forget. Long enough to regret. Cause? He asked. Chronic illness, Calloway replied. Advanced by the time she received treatment. Daniel let out a slow breath. Advanced, which meant too late. Or worse, ignored until it was too late. He didn't ask the next question, because he already knew the answer. Financial status? Daniel asked instead. Calloway didn't hesitate this time. Strained, medical debt, minimal insurance coverage. The sister handled most of it alone. Daniel's jaw tightened. Alone. Of course she did. Because he had left, not disappeared, not forced, left. There was a difference. And now, he was standing in a house worth more than entire city blocks, learning that his daughter had died in a place where bills mattered more than survival. Anything else? Daniel asked. Calloway paused. Yes, sir. He flipped a page. There were eviction notices filed against the property 6 weeks ago. New ownership, redevelopment plans. Daniel frowned. Redevelopment? Yes. High-end conversion project. The entire block is being cleared. Daniel's eyes darkened slightly. And they're still there? For now. A beat. Pressure tactics have begun. Daniel didn't need clarification. He knew exactly what that meant. Rising rent. Legal notices. Subtle intimidation. The kind of quiet force that pushed people out without leaving fingerprints. He had used it himself. More than once. Who owns the project? Daniel asked. Calloway glanced down. Gray Line Holdings. Daniel went still. That name, he knew it. Not as a partner. Not as competition. As something worse. A company that operated in the gray spaces between law and leverage. And they're targeting that block? Daniel asked. Yes, sir. Another pause. And the Carter residence sits directly in the center of the development zone. Of course it did. Daniel exhaled slowly. Everything always came back to the center. To the point of pressure. To the place where people had the least room to move. He turned away from the window. Schedule a meeting. With Gray Line? No. Daniel's voice hardened. With the city. Calloway nodded once. Yes, sir. And Calloway? Yes? Daniel hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then, have someone check on them. Calloway looked up. Discreetly, Daniel's tone made it clear this wasn't optional. Make sure they're safe. Calloway inclined his head. It will be done. He turned to leave. But Daniel spoke again. And Calloway? The older man stopped. Yes, sir? Daniel didn't look at him this time. Don't involve them directly. A beat. Not yet. Calloway understood. Yes, sir. He left quietly. The room returned to silence. But Daniel didn't move. His mind was no longer in the mansion. It was somewhere smaller, colder. A place where a woman worked too many hours. Where a child learned not to ask for too much. Where another child, his child, had once lived. And died. Without him. Daniel sat down slowly. Not out of weakness, out of weight. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph again. The edges were worn now. Familiar, dangerous. He stared at it for a long moment. Then, quietly, I should have come back. The words weren't loud. They weren't meant for anyone else. Just the truth, finally spoken. Outside, the city continued as it always did. Indifferent. Unchanged. But inside, something had shifted. Not completely, not cleanly, but enough. Because somewhere across the city, in a small apartment under pressure from forces bigger than it could fight, was a woman who had every reason to hate him, and a child who had looked at him without knowing anything about what he had done, and still asked if he was okay. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. The hesitation was gone, replaced by something quieter, more dangerous. Decision. He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the door, because for the first time in years, Daniel Whitmore wasn't reacting. He was moving first. Daniel didn't wait for morning. By the time the city shifted from night into that gray, uncertain hour before sunrise, he was already dressed, already moving, already thinking 3 steps ahead. The car was waiting. It always was. But this time, the destination wasn't a boardroom, a negotiation, or a deal waiting to be closed. It was Queens. Calloway stood by the door as Daniel approached. "You'll have security follow at a distance?" Calloway asked. "No." The answer came immediately. Calloway frowned slightly. "Sir, with respect, I'm not going there as Daniel Whitmore," he said. "Not today." A pause. "Then how would you like to be seen?" Daniel stopped, just briefly. Then, "I don't know yet." And that, more than anything, unsettled Calloway. Because Daniel Whitmore always knew exactly who he was walking in as. Today, he didn't. The drive was shorter than it should have been. Or maybe it only felt that way because Daniel didn't look at his phone once. Didn't check messages. Didn't review schedules. He watched the city instead. Really watched it. The streets changed as they moved deeper into Queens. Glass and steel gave way to brick and age. Clean lines softened into wear. Life became visible. People opening small shops. A man sweeping the sidewalk in front of a diner. A woman walking quickly. Coffee in one hand. Exhaustion in the other. This was a different New York. Not hidden. Just ignored. "Here, sir," the driver said quietly. Daniel nodded and stepped out. The building stood exactly as Calloway had described. Old. Tired. Still standing. He looked up at it for a long moment. This was where she had lived. Where his daughter had lived. And died. Without him ever setting foot here. Daniel walked inside. Daniel walked. Daniel. This was where she had lived. Walked. In their bay. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and something older time maybe, the kind that settles into walls and never quite leaves. Apartment numbers lined the corridor. He found the door. Paused. For the first time since he had made the decision to come, he hesitated. Not out of fear. Out of weight. Then he knocked. Inside, there was movement. Footsteps. Then, "Who is it?" Lisa's voice came through the door, cautious, already guarded. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because there was no version of this that would sound right. Finally, "It's me," he said. A beat, silence. Then the lock turned. The door opened halfway. Lisa stood there, her posture tense, one hand still gripping the edge of the door like she might close it at any second. When she saw him, her expression hardened instantly. "You've got a lot of nerve coming here," she said. Daniel didn't argue. "You told me to stay away," he said. "I know. Then why are you here?" "Because I should have been here years ago." But he didn't say that. "I need to talk to you," he said instead. Lisa let out a short breath. "No, you don't." She started to close the door. "About your sister." That stopped her, not completely, but enough. The door didn't shut. Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't get to say her name like that," she said, quietly. "I know," Daniel replied. A pause. Then, "Please." The word didn't belong to him. Not the man people knew. Not the man who built things, controlled outcomes, dictated terms. But it was the only word that worked here. Lisa studied him, long enough to decide something. Then she stepped back. 2 minutes, she said. "That's all you get." Daniel nodded and stepped inside. The apartment was small, but it was lived in, warm in a way his house had never been. There were drawings on the wall, shoes by the door, a faint smell of coffee and something cooking earlier. Life. Annie sat at a small table near the window, coloring quietly. She looked up when he entered. Her face brightened slightly. "You came back," she said. Daniel nodded once. "I said I would." Lisa closed the door behind him. "Say what you came to say," she said. Daniel looked around briefly, then back at her. "You're being pushed out." Lisa stiffened. "That's none of your business." "It is if I can stop it." A beat. Lisa crossed her arms. "And why would you do that?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Because the real answer wasn't something she would accept. "Because it's wrong," he said. Lisa almost laughed. "Now you care about what's wrong." The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Daniel didn't defend himself. You don't know anything about what we've been dealing with, she continued. You don't know what it's like trying to hold things together when everything keeps getting taken. I know more than you think. No, she said sharply. You don't. Silence fell between them. Heavy. Real. Annie watched quietly from the table, her small hands still, her crayon forgotten. Daniel took a step forward. I know I left, he said. Lisa's expression didn't change. I know what that cost, he added. That made something flicker, but it didn't soften her. It cost her everything, Lisa said. Daniel nodded once. I know. You don't get to fix that. I'm not trying to fix it. Then what are you doing here? Daniel looked at Annie, then back at Lisa. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. Lisa followed his gaze, her shoulders tightened slightly. Protective, always protective. She's not yours, Lisa said quietly. I know. The answer came without hesitation. And that mattered more than anything else he could have said. Lisa studied him again, searching for something. A lie. An angle. A reason not to believe him. But Daniel didn't move, didn't push, didn't explain further. Because this wasn't a deal. It wasn't a negotiation. It was something else. Something slower. Harder. I can stop the eviction, he said finally. Lisa's eyes sharpened. How? I own the project now. Silence. Complete. Annie blinked. Lisa didn't. That's not possible, she said. It is. A beat. And I will. Lisa shook her head slowly. No, she said. No. Nothing comes free from people like you. Daniel expected that. You don't owe me anything, he said. That's not how this works. It is this time. Lisa stared at him, long, unmoving. Why? She asked. Daniel didn't answer right away, because the truth was simple, but not easy. Finally, because I should have shown up sooner. The room went quiet. Annie looked between them, not understanding everything, but understanding enough. Lisa exhaled slowly. Not agreement, not forgiveness, but something less rigid than before. We'll see, she said. It wasn't trust, but it wasn't rejection either. And for now, that was enough. Daniel didn't leave immediately. That surprised Lisa more than anything else. Most men like him, men with kata, influence came in, said what they needed to say, and left before anyone could question their intentions, but not comfortably. Not like he belonged. Just present. Annie had gone back to her small table. Her crayons spread out again, though she wasn't really drawing. Every few seconds, she glanced up, checking if he was still there. He was, standing near the doorway, not sitting, not imposing, as if he understood that every inch closer had to be earned. Lisa watched him carefully. You said you own the project, she said finally. Daniel nodded. When did that happen? This morning. Her eyes narrowed. That fast? Yes. That's not normal. No, Daniel agreed. It isn't. A silence followed. Lisa crossed her arms. And I'm supposed to believe you just decided to buy an entire development overnight because of one conversation? Daniel met her gaze. Yes. She almost laughed again, but this time, it didn't come out. Because there was something in his expression that didn't match arrogance or calculation. It looked certain. That unsettled her more. People like you don't make emotional decisions, she said. I didn't say it was emotional. Then what is it? Daniel paused. Then, corrective. The word landed differently. Lisa didn't respond right away, because she understood that word. Not forgiveness. Not kindness. Correction. Something broken being acknowledged, even if it was too late to fix it completely. Annie looked up again. What does that mean? She asked. Daniel glanced at her. It means trying to do something right, he said. Annie nodded slowly, as if that made sense. Lisa didn't look convinced. Doing something right now doesn't erase what you did before, she said. I know, and it doesn't mean I trust you. I know that too. Another silence. But this one was less sharp. Lisa walked toward the kitchen, more out of habit than need, pouring herself a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. You said you'd stop the eviction, she said without turning. How? Daniel stepped forward slightly. The permits haven't been finalized, he said. Construction hasn't started. Legally, the project can be delayed. For how long? As long as I want. Lisa turned back slowly. And the other tenants? They stay. Her grip tightened slightly on the cup. You'd do that? Yes. Why? Daniel didn't hesitate this time. Because they don't deserve to be pushed out. Lisa studied him again, searching, testing, still not convinced but no longer dismissing him outright. And what do you get out of it? She asked. Daniel looked at Annie, then back at Lisa. Nothing. Lisa shook her head. That's not how your world works. Maybe it should. The answer came quieter, but heavier. Lisa didn't respond, because for the first time, she didn't have a quick argument ready. Annie slid off her chair and walked over, holding up her drawing. Look, she said. Daniel looked down. It was simple. Stick figures. A house, a car, and 3 people standing together. He stared at it longer than necessary. Who's that? He asked. Annie pointed. That's me. Then another figure. That's my mom. Then she hesitated slightly before pointing to the third. That's you. The room went still, but Annie kept going. You were in my dream, she said simply. You weren't sad in that one. Daniel didn't move, didn't speak. Because something about the drawing, something about the way she said it, landed deeper than anything else had. I don't belong in that picture, he said finally. Annie frowned slightly. Why not? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't a version of the truth that made sense to a child. Lisa stepped forward, gently lowering Annie's hand. That's enough, she said softly. Annie looked between them, sensing the shift, then nodded and went back to the table. Silence settled again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of them knew how to say. You can't just walk into our lives, Lisa said after a moment. I'm not trying to. That's exactly what this feels like. Daniel considered that, then nodded once. Then I'll step back. Lisa blinked slightly. That wasn't what she expected. I'll handle the situation with the building, he continued. Quietly. No involvement from you. And then? Daniel paused. Then I wait. Lisa frowned. For what? For you to decide if I should be anywhere near your lives. The honesty of that, it disarmed her more than anything else he had said. Because there was no pressure in it. No demand. Just patience. And that was something she hadn't seen from him before. Annie looked up again. You're leaving? She asked. Daniel nodded. For now, she seemed to think about that. Then, okay, she said. No drama, no sadness, just acceptance. But as he turned toward the door, she added quietly, You can come back if you want. Lisa closed her eyes briefly. Daniel stopped. Just for a second. Then he looked back at her. I'll wait, he said. Annie nodded, satisfied. Daniel opened the door, stepped out into the hallway. And this time, when it closed behind him, the silence didn't feel like control. It felt like distance. The kind that had to be crossed slowly, carefully, or not at all. Down the hallway, his footsteps echoed lightly, but for the first time in years, Daniel Whitmore wasn't walking away. He was learning how to come back. Daniel did exactly what he said he would do. He waited, but waiting, for a man like him, did not mean doing nothing. By mid-morning, the calls had already begun. Not loud ones, not aggressive, precise ones, the kind that didn't need repetition. In a quiet office overlooking the city, Daniel sat across from 3 men who were not used to being summoned, they were used to being courted. Gray Line Holdings. They came in confident. They didn't leave that way. You acquired controlling interest overnight, one of them said, trying to keep his tone neutral. That's Unusual. Daniel didn't respond to the observation. He slid a document across the table. "The project is suspended," he said. The man glanced at it, then back up. "That's not how this works." Daniel's expression didn't change. "It is now." Another man leaned forward slightly. "We have investors, timelines, contracts, and you'll keep them," Daniel replied calmly. "Just not here." Silence. Tension tightened. "You're walking away from a profitable redevelopment," the first man said. "For what reason?" Daniel met his eyes. "Because you chose the wrong block." That answer didn't satisfy them. It wasn't meant to. "This isn't charity," the man pressed. "There's something else behind this." Daniel leaned back slightly. "You're right. A beat." "There is." The room held still. Daniel's voice remained level. "You pushed too hard. Too fast. You targeted people who couldn't push back. That's business." "No," Daniel said quietly. "That's laziness." A flicker of irritation crossed one of their faces. "You think you're better than us?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "No." The answer disarmed them for half a second. "I think I've done worse," he continued, "which is why I know exactly what you're doing." Silence followed. Because there was no easy response to that. "You'll be compensated," Daniel added. "Above market value." The tension shifted. Less resistance now. More calculation. "And if we refuse?" one of them asked. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten. Didn't need to. "Then you'll spend the next 6 months in court," he said. "And you'll lose." A pause. "And you know that." That was the end of it. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just finished. By the time they left, the project was no longer theirs. And more importantly, it was no longer a threat. Across the city, in a small apartment that still smelled faintly of coffee and worn wood, Lisa didn't know any of this yet. She stood at the sink, staring out the window, her mind running in circles that didn't settle. Annie sat at the table again, drawing, same crayons, same quiet focus. But something had changed. Lisa could feel it, even if she couldn't name it. "You shouldn't have said that," Lisa said finally. Annie didn't look up. "Said what?" "That he could come back." Annie shrugged slightly. "He looked like he needed to." Lisa turned. "That's not your job," she said. Annie paused, then looked up. "I know." A small silence. "But sometimes people don't know where to go," Annie added. "So you tell them." Lisa exhaled slowly. Children made things sound simple. Too simple. But that didn't make them wrong. There was a knock at the door. Both of them froze. Lisa's body tensed instantly. That wasn't unusual anymore. Knocks had started meaning problems. She moved carefully toward the door. "Who is it?" she called. "Management." Her grip tightened slightly. "Of course." She opened the door halfway. A man stood there. Suit, clean, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Carter," he said, just following up on previous notices. Lisa didn't open the door further. "I already told you," she said. "We need more time." The man nodded. "Yes, about that." He pulled out a folder, then paused. Something in his expression shifted. Confusion. He glanced at the paper again, then back at her. "Actually, it seems there's been an update." Lisa frowned. "What kind of update?" The man hesitated. "Your unit is no longer under eviction review." Silence. Lisa didn't move. "Excuse me?" "The property has been reassigned," he said, still sounding unsure. "All pending actions are suspended." Lisa stared at him. "That doesn't just happen." "No," the man admitted. "It doesn't." A beat. But it did. He handed her the document. Effective immediately. Lisa took it slowly. Her eyes scanned the page. Legal terms, official language, final, real. The man gave a small nod. "You're good to stay," he said. Then he turned and left. Just like that. Lisa closed the door slowly, still staring at the paper. Behind her, Annie spoke. "Was that about the house?" Lisa didn't answer right away, because her mind had already gone somewhere else. To a man standing in her doorway the night before. Saying, "I'll handle it," she exhaled. long, unsteady. Annie walked over. What happened? Lisa looked down at her, then at the paper, then back at her. We're not getting kicked out, she said. Annie's face lit up. Really? Lisa nodded. Really? A small pause. Then Annie smiled. I told you, she said. Lisa frowned slightly. Told me what? That he would do something right. Lisa didn't respond, because the truth was, he had, and that made everything more complicated. Far across the city, Daniel stood in his office, looking out over the skyline. Calloway stepped in quietly. It's done, he said. Daniel nodded once. And them? They've been notified. A pause. They're safe. Daniel didn't respond immediately, but his shoulders shifted slightly, just enough to release something he hadn't realized he was holding. Good, he said. Calloway hesitated. Then, will you go back? Daniel looked out at the city, at the distance between where he stood and where he needed to be. Not yet, he said. A beat. I told her I'd wait. Calloway nodded. Understood. He turned to leave, but Daniel spoke again. Calloway. Yes, sir. Daniel didn't turn. Make sure no one touches that block again. The words were quiet, but absolute. Yes, sir. The door closed behind him, and Daniel remained where he was, watching, waiting, for the first time in his life, not forcing an outcome, but hoping that when the door opened again, it wouldn't close. Daniel kept his word. He didn't go back. Days passed. Not many, but enough for the absence to become noticeable. In the apartment, life returned to something that looked normal. Lisa went to work. Annie stayed close to home. The eviction notices stopped. No more letters, no more knocks, no more quiet pressure pressing against the walls, but something else had taken its place. A question, unspoken, lingering. On the third evening, Annie sat by the window again, her chin resting on her folded arms, watching the street below. Lisa noticed. You're going to wear a hole in that glass, she said, setting her bag down. Annie didn't turn. I'm just looking. For what? Annie hesitated. Then, for him, Lisa exhaled slowly. He said he'd wait, Annie added. That doesn't mean he's coming back. I know. A pause, but he said it like he meant it. Lisa didn't respond, because she remembered that too. The way he said things. Not like promises, like decisions. She walked into the kitchen, pouring herself a cup of coffee she didn't really want. You don't know him, she said after a moment. I know he looked sad, Annie replied quietly. Lisa leaned against the counter. That's not enough. Annie finally turned. Maybe it is, she said. Lisa met her eyes. Children didn't carry history. They didn't weigh decisions against years of pain. They saw what was in front of them. And sometimes, that made them right in ways adults couldn't accept. A knock came at the door. Both of them froze. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Lisa set the cup down slowly. Stay here, she said. Annie didn't argue. Lisa walked to the door, her body already tense. Who is it? Maintenance. Lisa frowned. That wasn't unusual, but it hadn't happened in a while. She opened the door slightly. A different man this time. No suit, no folder, just a clipboard and a polite expression. Evening, ma'am, he said. Just checking the units. Routine. Lisa studied him. Since when? New ownership, he said. We're making sure everything's up to code. That made sense. More sense than anything else had lately. She opened the door a little wider. Make it quick, she said. He nodded and stepped inside, glancing around with practiced efficiency. Annie watched from the table. Quiet. Observant. The man moved through the apartment, checking outlets, windows, pipes. Normal. Too normal. Then he paused. Just for a second, near the door. His hand brushed lightly against the frame. A small motion, easy to miss. But Annie saw it. She always saw things like that. The man straightened and smiled. All good, he said. You're in better shape than most units. Lisa nodded. Thanks. He gave a polite nod and left. The door closed. The apartment settled again. Lisa let out a small breath. See, she said. That's what happens when things get fixed. Annie didn't answer. She was still looking at the door. What is it? Lisa asked. Annie frowned slightly. He didn't look like maintenance. Lisa stiffened. What do you mean? Annie shrugged. He didn't check everything. Lisa walked over slowly. What do you mean he didn't check everything? Annie pointed. He didn't look at the sink. Lisa glanced toward it. And you said that's always broken? Lisa's chest tightened slightly. She looked back at the door. Then at Annie. What else? Annie thought for a second. He touched the door, she said, like he was, feeling it. Lisa didn't speak. Because something about that didn't sit right. Across the city, Daniel stood in his office, reviewing a report Calloway had just placed in front of him. Unidentified visitor, Calloway said, entered the building posing as maintenance. Daniel's eyes sharpened. When? 30 minutes ago. Daniel's jaw tightened. And? Short visit. No confrontation. No immediate threat. That's not good enough. Calloway nodded. We're looking into it. Daniel didn't sit. Didn't slow down. Who sent him? We don't know yet. Daniel looked out the window. The city no longer felt distant. It felt connected. Every movement. Every decision. Every consequence. Someone's testing boundaries, he said quietly. Yes, sir. Daniel turned back. Increase surveillance. It's already in place. Then make it visible. Calloway paused. That will draw attention. That's the point. A beat. I want them to know they're being watched. Calloway nodded. Yes, sir. Daniel stepped closer to the desk. And Calloway, yes? If anyone goes near that apartment again. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Calloway understood. Yes, sir. The room fell silent, but it wasn't still. Something had shifted. From waiting to awareness, from distance to involvement. Back in the apartment, Lisa locked the door, checked it twice. Then, once more, Annie watched quietly. You think something's wrong? She asked. Lisa hesitated. Then, I think things aren't over yet. Annie nodded slowly, as if she already knew that. She walked back to the table, picked up her crayon, and began drawing again. But this time, the picture was different. The house was the same. She was still there. Her mom was still there. But outside, near the door, she drew a shadow, watching, and far away, she added another figure, standing still, waiting, watching back. Daniel didn't wait for the next move. He had learned that lesson the hard way years ago, when waiting had cost him everything. This time, he moved first. By noon, the building across from Lisa's apartment had a new tenant. No paperwork, no announcement, just a man sitting by a window that had a clear view of the entrance. By evening, there were two more. Different faces, different positions, all quiet, all watching. Daniel stood in his office, reviewing live feeds that weren't officially his. Angle 3, he said. Calloway adjusted the screen. The hallway outside Lisa's apartment appeared grainy, but clear enough. Replay, Daniel added. The footage rolled back. The man from earlier, maintenance uniform, calm, controlled. He knocked. Entered. Stayed exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Left. Daniel leaned slightly closer. Pause. The frame froze. The man's hand rested lightly against the doorframe. Zoom. The image sharpened. Calloway narrowed his eyes. He's placing something, he said. Daniel didn't respond, because he already saw it. A small device, thin, almost invisible, placed exactly where no one would think to check. Audio pickup, Calloway added. Daniel's expression darkened. Remove it, he said. Yes, sir. And replace it. Calloway glanced at him. With ours? Daniel nodded once. If they want to listen, let them. A beat. We'll decide what they hear. Across the city, Lisa was just finishing dinner. Nothing complicated. Soup, bread, the kind of meal that stretched just enough. Annie sat across from her, quieter than usual. "You didn't draw today," Lisa said. Annie shrugged. "I didn't feel like it." Lisa studied her. "What's wrong?" Annie hesitated. Then, "That man earlier." Lisa's hand paused slightly. "What about him?" "I think he wasn't fixing anything." Lisa forced a small smile. "Not everything needs fixing." Annie shook her head. "He was looking." "For what?" Annie didn't answer right away. Because she didn't know. She just felt it. The way children sometimes do. Like something was there, even if no one could see it yet. A knock came again. This time, sharper. Lisa froze. Not again. She stood slowly. Walked to the door. "Who is it?" "Building management." Different voice, different tone. Lisa didn't open the door fully. "What do you want?" "Just a quick follow-up." "Won't take long." Lisa hesitated. Then, "No," she said. Silence on the other side. Then, "Ma'am, this is standard." I said no. Her voice didn't rise. But it didn't bend either. Another pause. Then footsteps. Leaving. Lisa stood there for a moment longer, then locked the door. Again. Annie watched. "He came back," she said quietly. Lisa nodded. "Yes. That's not normal." "No," Lisa admitted. "It isn't." Across the city, Daniel watched the same moment unfold on screen. The knock, the refusal, the retreat. His jaw tightened slightly. "They're getting bolder," Calloway said. Daniel nodded. "They expected compliance, and they didn't get it." "No." A pause. "That changes the approach." Daniel didn't sit. Didn't relax. "Track him," he said. "We are." "And the first one?" "Already flagged." Daniel turned slightly. "I want names." Calloway nodded. "You'll have them." Daniel looked back at the screen. At the door. At the space just beyond it. "They're not after the building," he said quietly. Calloway didn't respond immediately. "Then what?" he asked. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "They're checking reactions." A beat, testing who responds. Calloway understood. "And now they know." Daniel nodded. "Yes." Silence filled the room. Heavy. Measured. "Then, we move," Daniel said. Back in the apartment, Lisa sat down slowly. The soup had gone cold. She didn't touch it. Annie walked over. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. Lisa looked at her, then shook her head. "No." A pause. "But something's not right." Annie nodded. "I know." Lisa reached for her hand. Held it. Tighter than usual. "You stay close to me, okay?" Annie nodded again. "I will." Outside, the hallway remained quiet. But it didn't feel empty anymore. Because someone had been there. And would come back. Annie looked toward the door. Then back at her mom. "He said he would wait," she said softly. Lisa didn't ask who. She knew. "And maybe," Annie added, "he's still watching." Lisa exhaled slowly. Because for the first time, she hoped that was true. Across the city, Daniel stood in the dim light of his office. Watching. Not waiting anymore. Because the line had been crossed. And this time, he wouldn't be late. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. By the time the sun disappeared behind the skyline, everything was already in motion. "Bring him in," Daniel said. Calloway nodded once and stepped out. The room remained dim, lit only by the city bleeding through the glass. Daniel stood with his back to the door, hands resting lightly on the edge of his desk, his reflection faint in the window. He wasn't angry. That would have been easier. This was something colder, more precise. The door opened. Footsteps. Hesitant. Not confident anymore. "Mr. Whitmore," the man said, trying to sound steady. Daniel didn't turn. "Sit." The man hesitated, then obeyed. There was a long pause, long enough for discomfort to settle in. Then, "You went into that apartment twice," Daniel said. "Not a question." The man swallowed. I was just doing my job. Daniel turned slowly. And who gave you that job? Silence. Daniel stepped closer. Not threatening. Just inevitable. I'm not asking twice. The man shifted in his chair. You don't understand. No, Daniel said quietly. You don't understand. A beat. That building is no longer yours to touch. The man's composure cracked slightly. We're not after the building. Daniel stopped. That mattered. Then what are you after? He asked. The man hesitated. Too long. Daniel's voice dropped. Wrong answer. Calloway stepped forward slightly. Not aggressively, just enough. Pressure. The man exhaled sharply. They told us to check the unit, he said. That's all I know. Who is they? Another pause. Then, Gray Line didn't shut everything down, the man admitted. There are other interests. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What interests? The man shook his head. I don't have names. Daniel studied him. Not for what he said. For what he didn't. You placed a device, Daniel said. The man froze. Daniel stepped closer. You weren't checking pipes, he continued. You were listening. The man didn't deny it. That wasn't for eviction, Daniel added. That was surveillance. Silence. Heavy. Final. Daniel straightened slightly. Calloway. Yes, sir. Make sure he doesn't go back there. The man looked up quickly. I already told you everything. Daniel didn't look at him. You told me enough. Calloway placed a hand on the man's shoulder. Firm. Controlled. The message was clear. This conversation was over. The man was escorted out. The door closed. Silence returned. But it wasn't empty. It was sharper now. Focused. They're not just pushing tenants out, Calloway said. No, Daniel replied. They're watching something. Daniel nodded once. And now we know where. Across the city, Lisa didn't feel safe. She couldn't explain it. Nothing had happened. Not directly. But something had changed. The air felt different. Heavier. She checked the locks again. Then the windows. Then the door. Again. Annie watched quietly from the couch. You already checked, she said. Lisa didn't stop. I know. Then why are you doing it again? Lisa paused. Because she didn't have a good answer. Just making sure, she said. Annie nodded slowly. But she didn't look convinced. Do you think they'll come back? Annie asked. Lisa turned. I don't know. That was the truth. And she hated it. Annie looked toward the door. Then back at her. I think someone's already here. Lisa's chest tightened. What do you mean? Annie stood and walked toward the hallway. Not afraid, just certain. She stopped near the doorframe, pointed. Here. Lisa followed, looked. At first, nothing. Then, a small object. Thin. Almost invisible. Attached near the edge. Her breath caught. What is that? She whispered. Annie didn't answer. She just watched. Lisa reached out, then stopped. Don't touch it, instinct. She stepped back slowly, pulled Annie behind her. We're not staying here tonight, she said. Annie looked up. Where are we going? I don't know yet. Lisa grabbed her phone. Her hands weren't steady. Not anymore. She hesitated, just for a second. Then, she dialed. Across the city, Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen, didn't hesitate. He answered. Yes. A pause, then Lisa's voice. Tight. Controlled. But underneath. Fear. There's something in my apartment, she said. Something on the door. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something in him shifted instantly. Don't touch it, he said. I didn't. Good. A beat. Are you alone? Yes. With Annie? Yes. Daniel turned, already moving. Stay where you are, he said. No, Lisa replied quickly. I'm not staying here. Daniel stopped, adjusted. Then listen carefully, he said. Leave the building. Now. Stay in a public place. A pause. I'll meet you there. Lisa hesitated. Trust didn't come easily, but neither did options. Okay, she said. The line went dead. Daniel grabbed his jacket. Car, he said. Calloway was already moving. Within seconds, they were gone. Back in the apartment, Lisa knelt in front of Annie. We're going for a walk, she said. Now? Yes. Annie nodded. No questions. They moved quickly. Out the door. Down the hall. Past the place where the device still sat. Quiet. Watching. Listening. The street outside felt louder than usual. Brighter. Safer. Lisa didn't stop walking. Annie held her hand, tightly. Is he coming? Annie asked. Lisa didn't answer right away. Then, yes, and for the first time that night, that word felt like something she could hold on to, because somewhere in the city, a man who should have never mattered again was already on his way. And this time, he wasn't too late. The streetlights flickered on one by one as Lisa and Annie reached the corner. Not running, but not slowing either. Lisa's grip on Annie's hand was tight enough that Annie noticed, but didn't complain. She understood this kind of silence, the kind that meant something was wrong, even if no one said it out loud. They stopped outside a small diner that sat open 24 hours, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the evening air. Inside, Lisa said. Annie nodded. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. Warm light. The smell of coffee and grilled food. A few people scattered across booths. Tired faces. Quiet conversations. Normal. Safe at least for now. They slid into a booth near the window. Lisa sat facing the door, watching, always watching. Annie sat across from her, swinging her feet slightly under the table. He said to stay in a public place. Annie said softly. Lisa nodded. I know. You listened. Lisa looked at her. I didn't have a better option. That was the truth, and Annie accepted it. A waitress approached. Older, kind eyes. The kind of person who had seen enough of life not to ask unnecessary questions. You ladies okay? She asked gently. Yeah, Lisa said quickly. Just coffee and maybe some fries. The waitress nodded. I'll bring it right out. She didn't press, didn't linger, just left them with a quiet understanding. Lisa exhaled slowly, but her eyes never left the door. Minutes passed, each one longer than the last. Then, a car pulled up outside. Not loud, not flashy, but deliberate. Annie saw it first. He's here, she said. Lisa didn't ask how she knew, because when the door opened, Daniel Whitmore walked in. He didn't rush, didn't draw attention, but everything about him shifted the space around him. People noticed. Even if they didn't know why, his eyes found them immediately, and something in his expression tight, focused eased just slightly when he saw they were okay. He walked over, stopped at the edge of the booth. You're both all right? He asked. Lisa nodded once. For now. Daniel glanced at Annie. She nodded too. I told you, she said quietly. You came back. Daniel held her gaze for a second, then looked at Lisa. Did anyone follow you? No. Did you touch the device? No. Good. He slid into the seat across from Lisa, next to Annie. Not close, but not distant either. Controlled. What is it? Lisa asked. That thing in my apartment. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because there was no version of the truth that wouldn't change everything. Someone's listening, he said finally. Lisa's face tightened. Listening to what? You. A pause. Why? Daniel met her eyes. That's what I'm trying to find out. Lisa leaned back slightly. That doesn't make sense, she said. We don't have anything. Daniel didn't respond, because that assumption, that they had nothing, was exactly why people like them became targets. You don't need to have something, he said quietly. You just need to be in the way of something. Lisa's silence told him she understood that more than she wanted to. The waitress returned, setting down coffee and fries. Neither of them touched it. Annie did. She picked up a fry, dipped it slowly, then looked between them. You're both doing that thing again, she said. Lisa frowned slightly. What thing? Talking like everything is a problem. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. That's because it is, he said. Annie considered that. Then fix it. The simplicity of it landed harder than it should have. Lisa shook her head slightly. It's not that easy. Annie shrugged. It never is. Silence followed. But it wasn't empty. It was thinking. Daniel leaned forward slightly. You can't go back there tonight, he said. Lisa nodded. I figured. I have a place. Lisa's eyes sharpened immediately. No, the answer came fast. Firm. Daniel didn't push. It's secure, he said. I don't care. A beat. We're not staying with you. Daniel accepted that, without argument. Then somewhere else, he said. Lisa hesitated. Because now, she didn't have a better option. Hotel, she said finally. Daniel nodded. I'll arrange it. I can pay for it. I know. A pause. But let me handle it. Lisa looked at him, long, weighing. Then, fine, she said. Not trust, but not refusal. Daniel stood. I'll take care of it now. Annie looked up. Are you coming back? Daniel met her eyes. Yes, she nodded, satisfied. He stepped away, already pulling out his phone, already moving. Lisa watched him, still unsure, still guarded, but no longer dismissing him. Not after tonight, because something had crossed a line, and whether she liked it or not, he was already part of it. Annie leaned forward slightly. You're less mad at him now, she said. Lisa didn't answer right away, because that wasn't the right word. Mad isn't the problem, she said finally. Then what is? Lisa looked at the door where Daniel had just walked out. The problem, she said quietly, is that I don't know if I can trust what he's trying to be. Annie followed her gaze, then smiled slightly. Maybe he doesn't know either. Lisa exhaled slowly, because that felt true. Outside, Daniel stood by the car, giving instructions, his voice low, controlled. But his eyes were already back on the diner, on the two people inside. Because this was no longer about fixing a mistake. This was about protecting something that had already been targeted. And this time, he wasn't going to walk away. Daniel didn't take long. By the time he returned to the diner, the plan was already in place. Room's ready, he said, sliding back into the booth. Midtown. Secure building. Private access. Lisa nodded once. That's fine. She didn't ask how he arranged it so fast. Didn't want to know. Annie looked between them. Are we going now? Daniel checked his watch. Yes. Lisa stood first, already gathering her bag, her movements quick but controlled. Annie followed, slipping her small hand into her mother's again. They stepped out into the night. The air had cooled. The street was still alive but not safe in the way it had felt before. Daniel opened the car door. Get in. Lisa hesitated for half a second, then did, because at this point, safety mattered more than pride. The ride was quiet. No music. No small talk. Just the hum of the city moving past them. Annie sat between them, looking out the window. You always ride in cars like this? She asked Daniel. Most of the time. She nodded. It's quiet. Daniel glanced at her. Yes, Annie thought about that. Too quiet, she said. Daniel didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. The hotel rose ahead of them. Glass, steel, controlled entry, not extravagant, not showy, just secure. Daniel stepped out first, scanning the entrance without making it obvious. Come on, he said. Inside, everything moved efficiently. No waiting. No questions. A key card was handed over. Top floor, Daniel said. Lisa took it. Thank you. The words were polite, but this time, there was something else in them. Not trust, but acknowledgement. They took the elevator. Silence again. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty. Soft carpet, muted lighting, no noise. Lisa unlocked the door, checked the room immediately. Bathroom, closet, windows. Then finally, she nodded. It's fine. Annie walked in slowly, looking around. It's bigger than our place, she said. Lisa gave a faint smile. Most places are. Annie set her small bag down, then turned to Daniel. Are you staying? The question hung in the air. Daniel looked at Lisa. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. Not harsh, just clear. Daniel nodded. I'll be downstairs, he said. If anything happens, call. Lisa hesitated. Then, okay. Another small shift, another step. Daniel turned to leave. But Annie spoke again. Wait. He stopped. She walked over, held something out. A crayon drawing, the same one. The house, the 3 figures. But now, there was something new. A 4th figure, standing closer, not far away anymore. Daniel looked at it, then at her. I changed it, Annie said. He nodded slowly. I see that. She smiled slightly. You're not outside anymore. Daniel didn't speak right away, because something about that, something simple, had just landed deeper than anything else. Thank you, he said quietly. Annie nodded, satisfied. Lisa watched the exchange, didn't interrupt, but something in her expression softened. Just a little. Daniel turned and left. The door closed behind him. Inside the room, silence settled again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. Lisa sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. Annie climbed up beside her. We're safe now, right? Annie asked. Lisa looked around, then at her. For tonight, she said. Annie leaned against her. That's enough. Lisa wrapped an arm around her, held her close. Because for now, it had to be. Downstairs, Daniel stood near the entrance, watching the lobby through the reflection in the glass. Calloway approached quietly. Room secured, he said. Daniel nodded. Surveillance? In place. And outside? Covered. Daniel exhaled slowly, but he didn't relax. Because this wasn't over. Any updates? He asked. Calloway hesitated. Then, we identified one of the men. Daniel turned. And? Former contractor. Worked security logistics. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Who hired him? Calloway shook his head. Still digging. A pause. But this wasn't random. Daniel nodded. I know. Silence stretched between them. Then, they're not going to stop, Calloway said. Daniel looked back toward the elevator. Toward the floor where Lisa and Annie were now. No, he said quietly. They're not. A beat. But neither am I. Calloway didn't respond. Because he didn't need to. He had seen that look before. Not often. But enough to understand what it meant. This wasn't business anymore. This was personal. And when something became personal for Daniel Whitmore, it didn't end halfway. Upstairs, Annie had already fallen asleep, curled slightly on the bed, one hand still resting near the drawing she had given him. Lisa sat beside her, watching, not moving, not thinking about tomorrow, just this moment, because that was all she could hold right now. For the first time in days, no knocks, no pressure, no unknown presence behind the door, just quiet. She leaned back slightly, closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come, because her mind kept circling back, to him. To the way he showed up. To the way he didn't push, didn't demand. Just stayed. And that was the part she didn't know what to do with, because men like him didn't usually stay, and yet, he had. Downstairs, Daniel remained exactly where he was. Watching, waiting, but no longer uncertain. Because whatever this was, whatever had started, it wasn't over, not even close. And this time, he would see it through to the end. Daniel stayed in the lobby until past midnight. Not because he had to. Because leaving felt wrong. The hotel had settled into its late-night rhythm, quiet footsteps, low voices, the occasional elevator chime breaking the stillness. Staff moved with soft efficiency. Guests came and went without noticing him. But Daniel noticed everything. Every face, Every movement, every pause that lasted a second too long. Calloway stood a few steps behind him, giving space but never distance. "You should rest." "Sir," he said quietly. Daniel didn't look at him. "They came twice in one day," he replied. "They won't wait long to try again." Calloway nodded. "Security is layered. No one gets near that floor without clearance." Daniel's gaze remained fixed ahead. "That didn't stop them before." A pause. "No," Calloway admitted. "It didn't." Silence followed. Then, "I want names by morning," Daniel said. "You'll have them. And I want to know why." Calloway didn't respond immediately, because that question was the one that mattered. Upstairs, the room was still. Annie slept deeply, her breathing even. One hand curled loosely near her face. The drawing lay beside her on the bed, slightly crumpled now, but still clear. Lisa hadn't moved much. She sat in the chair near the window, watching the city below. Lights, cars, distance. Her mind didn't settle. It circled. Back to the apartment. The knock. The device. The call. And then, him. The way he answered. The way he didn't hesitate. The way he showed up. She exhaled slowly. Because none of that made sense. Not for someone like him. A soft knock at the door. Lisa froze. Every muscle tightened instantly. Not again. She stood slowly, moved toward the door. Careful. "Who is it?" "Room service." Lisa didn't open it. "We didn't order anything." A pause. Then, "Complimentary, ma'am." Her grip tightened slightly. "No, that wasn't right." "Go away," she said. Silence. Then footsteps. Leaving. Lisa stood there for a long moment. Then stepped back. Something wasn't right. Again. She reached for her phone. Downstairs, Daniel's phone vibrated. He answered immediately. "Yes, there was someone at the door," Lisa said, her voice controlled but tight. "Room service. We didn't order anything." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Did you open it?" "No." "Good." He was already moving. "Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone." A beat. "I'm coming up." The line went dead. Daniel turned sharply. "Calloway." "Yes, sir." "Lock the elevators to that floor." "Already done." Daniel was already walking. Fast now. Not controlled. Not measured. Focused. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Every second stretched. Every floor too slow. When the doors opened, 2 security personnel were already in position. "No one's passed," one of them said. Daniel didn't stop. He walked straight to the room, knocked once. Firm. "It's me." The door opened immediately. Lisa stood there, tense, alert. Annie still asleep behind her. Daniel stepped inside. "Anyone else?" he asked. "No." He moved through the room quickly, checked the bathroom, the closet, the windows, clear. He stopped near the door, examined the handle. Then, the frame. His eyes narrowed slightly. "They were here," he said. Lisa's stomach dropped. "What?" "They didn't need you to open the door." A beat. "They just needed to confirm you were inside." Lisa stepped back slightly. "Why?" Daniel looked at her. Because now, he knew. They're narrowing the target. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Lisa shook her head slightly. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "We don't have anything they want." Daniel didn't answer right away. Because that assumption was the mistake. "They're not after what you have," he said quietly. "Then what?" Daniel's gaze shifted briefly to Annie. Then back. "They're after what you are connected to." Lisa froze. "No," she said immediately. "No, we're not connected to anything." Daniel held her gaze. "You are now." The words landed. Hard. Lisa's chest tightened. "You brought this here," she said, not accusing, just realizing. Daniel didn't deny it. "Yes." Silence filled the room. For a moment, it felt like everything might break again. But Annie stirred slightly, shifted in her sleep. And that stopped it. Lisa looked at her, then back at Daniel. "What do we do?" she asked. The question came quieter now. Not defensive, not resistant, just real. Daniel stepped closer to the door, positioned himself between it and them. We don't react, he said. A beat. We control it. Lisa frowned. How? Daniel's voice lowered. We let them think they're ahead. And then? His eyes hardened. We find out who they are. Lisa studied him. This time, not pushing back, because she could see it now. This wasn't about fixing a mistake anymore. This was a fight. And whether she wanted it or not, she was already in it. Annie's voice came softly from the bed. You're both awake. They turned. She was sitting up now, sleepy, but aware. Did something happen? She asked. Lisa walked over immediately. No, baby. Everything's fine. Annie looked at Daniel, then back at her mom. No, she said quietly. It's not. Silence. Children always knew, even when no one said it. Annie pulled the drawing closer, looked at it, then added something new with her crayon, a line, a barrier, between the house and the shadow outside. She looked up. They're trying to come in, she said. Daniel met her eyes. Yes, Annie nodded. Then don't let them. Simple, clear, certain. Daniel didn't smile, but something in his expression shifted, because that was the only answer that mattered. And this time, he wouldn't fail. Daniel didn't leave the room, not this time. He stayed by the door, one hand resting lightly against the frame. His presence no longer distant, no longer optional, anchored there, deliberate. The city outside continued its quiet rhythm, unaware of what had just shifted inside a single hotel room. Lisa stood near the bed, her hand resting protectively on Annie's shoulder. Neither of them spoke for a while, because now, there was nothing left to misunderstand. This wasn't about a mistake, or coincidence, or a past that had quietly resurfaced. This was something active, something watching, something closing in. And Daniel was part of it. You said we don't react, Lisa said finally, her voice steady but low. We control it. Daniel nodded. Yes. Lisa looked at him directly, then started explaining. There was no anger in it now, no resistance, just clarity. Daniel stepped away from the door slowly. They're not testing the building anymore, he said. They're testing me. Lisa's brow tightened. Why? Because I moved first. A pause. I shut down the project, bought the block, cut off whatever they were using it for. Lisa processed that. So this is retaliation? Daniel shook his head. No. A beat. This is curiosity. That was worse. Lisa exhaled slowly. They want to see how far you'll go. Daniel met her eyes. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Because the answer to that question would decide everything. Annie looked between them, then down at her drawing. Her small fingers traced the line she had added. The barrier. They don't know yet, she said quietly. Lisa glanced at her. Know what? Annie looked up. How strong the wall is. Daniel held her gaze. And for the first time, he didn't see a child speaking. He saw clarity. Uncomplicated. Unfiltered. The kind that cut through everything else. They're about to find out, he said. Calloway's voice came through Daniel's phone. Sir, Daniel answered immediately. Yes. We have a name. The room stilled. Go ahead. Marcus Halen. Daniel's expression changed, just slightly. Recognition. Former logistics coordinator. Calloway continued. Worked under a private contractor tied to multiple redevelopment operations. Lisa frowned. What does that mean? Daniel didn't look at her. It means this isn't just about property. A pause. It's about movement. Calloway continued. We traced recent activity. Halen's been working with a group operating outside standard channels. Daniel's voice dropped. Say it clearly. A beat. They move things through properties before redevelopment. Quietly. Off record. Lisa's stomach tightened. What kind of things? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Because the truth would change everything. Things that don't go through legal systems, he said finally. Lisa stepped back slightly. And our building? Daniel nodded once. Was a root. Silence fell hard. Annie looked up. They were using our home? She asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. Yes. Lisa shook her head. No, that doesn't make sense. We would have noticed something. Daniel looked at her. No, you wouldn't have. A pause. That's why they choose places like that. Lisa didn't argue. Because deep down, she knew. The quiet. The overlooked. The places no one paid attention to. That's where things happened. And no one stopped them. Until now. You shutting it down. Lisa said slowly. You didn't just stop a project. Daniel nodded. I exposed a system. A beat. And they don't like that. Annie looked at her drawing again. Then added something else. A second line. Stronger. Thicker. They're going to try again, she said. Daniel didn't deny it. Yes. Lisa looked at him. Then what happens next? Daniel stepped closer to the window, looked out at the city, but he wasn't seeing buildings or lights. He was seeing patterns. Movement. Pressure. They'll escalate, he said. How? They'll stop being careful. Lisa's breath caught slightly. And us? Daniel turned back. This time, there was no hesitation, no distance, no uncertainty. You stay where I can protect you. The words were simple, but absolute. Lisa didn't respond right away. Because this was the line, the point where everything changed. You said you'd wait, she said. Daniel nodded. I did. And now? A pause. Then, now they moved first. Silence. Because that answer was final. Lisa looked at Annie. Then back at Daniel. The fear was still there. The doubt. The weight of everything that had happened before. But now, there was something else. A decision forming. Slow, careful, real. Okay, she said. The word came quietly, but it held. Daniel didn't react outwardly, but something inside him settled. Not relief, not victory. Just alignment. Annie smiled slightly. I told you, she said. Lisa looked down at her. Told me what? That he wouldn't let them in. Lisa exhaled, then nodded. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Daniel stepped back toward the door. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow changes things. Lisa frowned. How? Daniel paused. Then, we stop waiting. He opened the door. Then stopped. Looked back once. At Annie. At Lisa. At something he had almost lost. And almost missed again. This ends, he said quietly. Not a promise. Not a threat. A decision. The door closed behind him. And for the first time, the silence in the room didn't feel like fear. It felt like the moment before something breaks, or is finally put back together. Outside, the city kept moving. Unaware. Unchanged. But inside, the line had been drawn. And this time, Daniel Whitmore would not walk away from it. This story reminds us that the past never truly disappears. It waits quietly until we are ready to face it. Daniel built a life of power to escape his mistakes, but no success could replace the love he abandoned. Through Annie, he is forced to confront a painful truth. Real strength is not in control, but in taking responsibility. The story teaches that while we cannot change what we've done, we can choose what we do next. Redemption does not come from grand gestures, but from showing up, protecting others, and refusing to walk away again. And sometimes, it takes the honesty of a child to remind us how to be human again. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.